Hi, I'm Kaytlyn.
And I'm Brianna.
And welcome to the Reader's Clubhouse, where we revisit our childhood favorite content. Brianna, did you see the video? You probably would have seen it on Instagram. I saw it on... No, I'm sorry. Wrong. You probably saw it on TikTok, and I saw it on Instagram, because I refused to download TikTok.
You do.
The video of those three ladies who, I think, they were all at least above 20. I don't want to say they were all middle-aged.
I think one of them was a daughter, is what it was. Of one of the two older
three
ladies.
women who went fishing and left the men at home. They caught a big fish and they came home and the men were like, ho, 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 ho. And the ladies were like, ha, 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 ha. And the lady was the one who actually caught it was holding it.
Yes. Well, kind of like how dudes like to use their fish photo as their...
Hinge profile or dating profiles.
Hinge profile, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. She did the same exact thing.
She did
it was so great.
Have you ever been fishing?
Once, a really long time ago.
What?
I remember Dad took me and Josh or something. I don't remember. This was like when I was like an older kid or a tween or something. And we went out to a lake, and I don't remember catching anything, though.
I have no memory of that whatsoever.
I don't remember if you were there, so that might have been part of it.
Well,
I think it might have been we were doing camping, too, or something.
I'm sure I wasn't there. But that is crazy, because I honestly was banking on you not having a fishing story.
Gotcha.
You did get me. Wow.
Yes, I did. Because
I was going to relate my fishing story, but...
You have a fishing story?
Yeah, I went fishing one time with our uncle. It's when we went to Decatur Island.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay.
And I went fishing, and the only thing I did on that trip, and I was, I don't know, probably, how old was I? Probably 10 or something. And I was there to watch our younger cousins who were significantly younger than us, as in they were like toddlers or like very young children. And I got a really bad sunburn right in the part of my hair on my scalp.
Scalp
it was
burn.
terrible. It was also that trip that I got sunscreen in my eyes, and it was bad. I was crying, and I rubbed my eyes with my sunscreened hands, and I started to cry more because my eyeballs hurt so bad. Yeah. Oh, it was painful. All right, Brianna. So anyway, painful. I was asking you that because in this book, there's a fishing scene that is so minuscule that it didn't really have anything to do with the plot, but it's a fun little character aside. Yeah, well, speaking of, what book are we reading, Brianna?
So, to jump off of our fishing stories, to start off for this week, for our very first episode of the Reader's Clubhouse, we are going to be talking about the first book in the Redwall series, which is also called Redwall. This book, just for some context, guys, so you're aware of, like, the decade it was written in, that kind of a thing and stuff. To start us off, the release year for this book is 1986. So keep that in mind. If you ever read this, it was written in the 80s.
Can I just say,
and then, yes.
That was 10 years before I was born.
Yeah. It was less time before I was born. True.
Brianna's like, not going to dox myself.
Nope. So, next, we talking about a little bit about the author. The author is Brian Jacques. At the time when he wrote these, he was kind of already an older gentleman and everything. He often says in his little blurbs, like, he did so many different kinds of jobs. He was like, I think a radio jockey at one point, essentially like a truck driver or something. So he had a lot of longshoremen. Yeah, he had a lot of different skills that he brought to these stories, and I feel like you can kind of get that feeling with some of the stuff. I feel like, and you'll get a little more context, listeners, at some point with this, the moles especially. Some of the things, I feel like definitely tapped into some of the life experiences with that. Then the genre that this is put under is fantasy. And I want to, like, clarify with that. There's, like, no magic, really, like, actual magic or magicians or any of that kind of stuff in the series. At the most, there's some spiritualism, where people have beliefs in spirits and things like that. So that's the most it goes into with something fantastical.
And it's not like spirits as in like evil spirits or things like that. It's as in the spirit of an ancestor type of thing, more so than anything.
Yeah. Will speak to their descendant or descendants of a place that they're protecting, kind of a thing and stuff. And then finally, this book's series specifically is geared towards anybody from the ages of 18 to 14, which is actually around the time that Yes.
8 to 14.
Oh, 8 to 14. Sorry, guys. From the ages of 8 to 14. So in that case, that's considered a middle grade book. So if you are a parent, that's kind of the age that you'll want to watch out for with your kid if you would love for them to get into fantasy genre, like have it as a starter fantasy. Because honestly, for me, this was, I think, one of the big starter fantasies for me because I read this around that time, and it was probably the first series that I read that was like a bigger fantasy for me and stuff. So there's that. Now, one of the things we are going to do every episode, so you're all aware, there's going to be spoilers for this series.
Oh, big.
Most of you listening to this will probably be people who have already enjoyed those series. If you're just somebody who's one of our dear friends or somebody that knows us and stuff and you're listening to, never read that series, we are going to spoil it. So if you're like, this sounds interesting, be aware of that. If you would like to, you can skip over our overview section, and we can see about what we can do to try to make you aware of where that section will be and stuff. But just be aware, we are going to spoil things. So I'm going to start us off by giving a brief summary of the book Redwall.
A Douglas brief summary.
A Douglas brief summary. You guys may at some point find out what that actually means. So, to start us off, the book starts with a pretty chaotic scene of a group of rats, ferrets, and stoats riding in a carriage, essentially, and basically like careening down this lane and stuff. And there's a lot of chaos and all that kind of thing. We're introduced to our main antagonist, Clooney, who is not a good guy, or good rat, technically in this case. And he makes it very aware that he is trying to find a place that he can set up shop, essentially, and rule over and do whatever the heck rats want to do, kind of a thing and stuff. So we have that scene. It's very chaotic. They crash. They lose actually some of their people in this case, this group is called a horde. And that's kind of where we're left off with them. Then we transition to the Abbey itself, where we meet a number of denizens. Some of them will become very important characters. A couple of them that I'll kind of like talk about here is we have Matthias, our main character. He is a young mouse who just wants to do something amazing and wants to be recognized for his, like, who he is and all of that kind of stuff. So he's like a dreamer and all that kind of stuff. We also have some of the other denizens at Redwall. There's Constance the Badger Marm. She kind of looks after all of the kids and also like various other things going on. She's big and strong, as most badgers are in the series. There's old Methuselah, who's the recorder. There's the abbot of the Abbey of Redwall. And Kaytlyn, what was the abbot's name? Do you remember? I'm forgetting right now.
Mortimer.
Abbot Mortimer. So Abbot Mortimer is essentially the leader of the Abbey. So those are a few of the bigger people who essentially like are in charge of Redwall, the Abbey. Then we see that they're all preparing for a feast. During this time, kind of leading into the part where they're talking about the feast, that's where the whole fishing bit comes in. Matthias goes fishing with another member of the Redwall Abbey who I think his name is Brother Alf.
Yep.
Alf, yeah. So Brother Alf and him go out fishing and catch this really, really big fish. Everybody's excited. Everybody's celebrating. Some people from outside the Abbey show up. There's the church mice, the field mice, all those kinds of things. One of the people that comes and joins the feast from outside is Cornflower, who's this beautiful young mouse who catches the eye of Matthias. And they do a little bit of flirting, as much as like kind of younger characters do and everything. So they prepare for the feast, they have the feast, and as the night ends, everybody's going home, and then they become aware of the Horde because the Horde is nearing where they are, and the Abbey is not full of fighters. They are very peaceful creatures. You'll see this throughout the series when they talk about Redwall, is they're creatures of peace, and they want to heal, and they want to make friends, and those kinds of things. So that's their focus. So when the Horde and the Abbey initially clash, the Abbey is trying to basically negotiate with them. As like, we don't want to fight you, and those kinds of things. So that was their original intent, the Abbey's intent with that. The Horde wants something to do with that. Clooney just wants to pillage and take over and have Redwall. So during that time, there were a couple of the other critters who were kidnapped. There was a family of voles. There's a specific vole that me and Kaytlyn have beef with. What was his name again, Kaytlyn?
Colin.
Colin the vole. We have a lot of beef with Colin the vole.
Yeah.
So Colin and his family were kidnapped. And Matthias, who's like, I can do this. I don't have to be stuck here. All that kind of stuff. He decides to sneak out of Redwall, past the Horde, and goes to where the Horde is staying, which they took over a nearby church. And he breaks, with some help, he breaks out the Vole family. During this time, we meet another pretty important, significant character named Basil Stag Hare, who pledges to help them in their fight once him and Matthias get away. During this time, we are made aware of this very important legend to the Abbey about the very first warrior that protected it, and his name is Martin the Warrior. Martin the Warrior, at this point in the story, we don't know a ton about his backstory except for that he was a warrior, he fought against tyranny, and then he became a member of the Abbey and protected it and everything. So that's what we know about Martin the Warrior at this point. We also know he had a very special sword, and Matthias, Methuselah, and Constance, who was also a part of that, decide to start looking for it. And so they start doing this kind of like searching for clues through their records, all those kinds of things. And eventually they find out that the sword is supposed to be on the roof. And there's a whole kerfuffle where one of our squirrel friends that's at the Abbey runs up there and tries to look and is chased by a group of sparrows. The sparrows chase after them and are not happy about that. But during the struggle, one of the sparrows, a sparrow named Warbeak, is captured, and Matthias decides, I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to figure out what's going on. And he takes Warbeak up there with him and tries to speak with the sparrows, but they don't really want to listen. And Warbeak and him have this moment together, so they become essentially like allies and buddies. And then they are able to overthrow the Sparrow King that they have up there. And Matthias finds out that the sword isn't up there, only its sheath is. So he's like, okay, what happened to it? So, talking to some of the sparrows explain, oh, the sword got lost. And it was lost deep in the woods. And during some other conversation that was happening, I believe it was Basil points in the direction of talking to this owl. Now, in this world, it's kind of iffy if birds are like full predators or not. In this case, this owl is. So, a lot of people are scared of it. And Matthias decides, I'm going to be the one that goes out. That happens a lot, guys. Matthias chooses a lot of the time just to be like, I'm going to do this, I can do this, etc. kind of a thing. So Matthias leaves. During a lot of the stuff, going back to the Horde and Clooney is trying to constantly break into the Abbey. He's trying to break down the gates. He tries to sneak over, dig under, all kinds of stuff. It all kind of like just fails during the course of it. A couple of a very important piece of information that happens during this time. A fox woman shows up with her son and is like, I'm a healer, I can help you. Because actually during this time, Clooney is having these odd nightmares, and there's this mouse warrior that keeps showing up in them. We all know, if you're reading this, that it's Martin the Warrior. Keeps showing up in his dreams. And Clooney's kind of going, honestly, a little mad during all of this. And he asks this fox lady to help him with it. And she does, but she's also playing both sides. And she tries to play the Abbey against the Horde and tried to get essentially reward from both of them. That doesn't work out. She gets killed. Her son barely lives and then is taken in by the Abbey when he's like being healed. But he's not grateful for that. And during the time, unfortunately, old Methuselah is killed as he's trying to leave because he accidentally kills him on his way out. So unfortunately, we lose old Methuselah, who is very sweet, old recorder and everything, and a dear friend of Matthias. So, cutting back to Matthias, he goes on this journey to try to find the sword. He goes to find the owl with some help of some shrews. In the story, the shrews are always very extra. They always talk over each other, lots of crazy stuff going on. But they do help Matthias find the owl. The owl tells him, oh, well, after some negotiation, because the owl did almost eat him, he explains that the sword is probably with this viper snake named Asmodeus. Matthias is like, all right. And he gets the shrews to help him go find the Asmodeus. And during a scuffle with Asmodeus, sadly, one of the shrews dies, but Matthias is able to get the sword of Martin the Warrior back. He travels back. The Abbey is barely staying together. The Horde is trying to get in. We're coming to the penultimate point in the story where the main conflict is. Matthias arrives back. He challenges Clooney to a one-on-one fight. They fight through Redwall, and they fight up the bell tower that is at the Abbey. And during that time, something happens. I can't quite remember exactly how it goes down, but the bell falls on top of Clooney and kills him in that, and it is also broken in half. So, and at that point, it's over. The rest of the Horde is chased away by the Abbey, and Abbey is once again safe. They have a feast, eventually find out that Cornflower and Matthias are in love, and they get married and all of those kinds of things, and we have a happy ending. So, that is the still pretty long, but still pretty short description of the book. That's probably way too long. We'll work on it. You guys can, tell us if that was annoying to listen to or if it was enjoyable, so we'll kind of work on it as we go along. So yeah, that is the description.
The thing about these books and why it makes summaries kind of difficult is because they're only about 350 to 400 pages long, usually. But they're full of characters, they're full of content, they're full of story. And a lot of times it jumps between one character's perspective. One chapter, you might have different characters' perspectives. You might have Clooney for a couple paragraphs, and you have Matthias, and you have somebody else, and you have somebody else, and you have somebody else. And so it makes summarizing these things challenging, especially when you're dang it, that's actually something that's kind of important to say when you're doing a whole summary. So we'll get better at it. But for now, that's a summary of book 1 of Redwall, also called Redwall. Yeah. Thanks, Brianna. That was a lot. There's a lot of stuff there.
There is.
This is a story about heroes and villains, a story very much like black and white, good versus evil. And if you're a fan of the Redwall books, you will always know good always prevails. Good always beats evil. The Redwallers always win, even when there's some sort of a cost. So classic good versus evil. Some other things just about the book that I think are really important to talk about is Brian Jacques writes a lot of poetry and a lot of songs for them. Now, if you're just reading the book with your eyeballs, you're not going to get the song aspect. It's more of just poems. And actually, I remember as a kid going through and trying to make up my own tunes for the songs, even though I am not a musician at all. You will never hear those tunes because I don't remember them. So it's one thing my bad memory does good for me is making me not remember embarrassing things. I think, but this is where actually, if you like audiobooks, the audiobooks for this series do really, really well. They're BBC radio productions, and that means they have a full cast there's 7 to 10 people playing the entire cast of characters in these books. They often have recorded music to go with the songs. So they've actually made the songs, and it's not like modern pop music. A lot of them are folk songs, and that means they're, it's like a lute, a string guitar, like an acoustic guitar, even. So it's not, they're not fantastic songs that you're going to put on while you're working out, but they are still really fun. The poetry of them, I think, is really interesting. I'm not also a poet, and I don't often read poetry, but I think it's worth at least listening to the audiobooks at least once just to kind of get the songs in your head.
As somebody who is experiencing this through audiobook currently, because I am trying to listen to all of them through audiobook, it was funny because the quality of this audiobook compared to some other ones I'd also listen to is like very much like up there and stuff. So it's a very good experience. I will say for this episode, I'm not going to try to say it every episode, you are getting the same people playing some very similar characters every time, so just be aware of that when you go from book to book and stuff. So
you'll recognize their voices as you go, which I think that's really fun. As someone who like watches a lot of cartoons or animated shows, you know, you get the similar voice actor or actress, and you're like, oh wait, I've heard them before, and it's
I
like,
know them. Yeah,
wait, she was Constance in the last book, and now she's, I don't know, whoever. It's just really fun. Yeah. Do we want to talk about sort of the world building and of Redwall specifically? Because obviously we'll talk about the world building of the rest. Redwall Abbey is set in a place called Mossflower Wood, and that in Redwall is all that you get. That's all the information you get. It's Redwall. We're in Mossflower.
Yeah.
Done and done. That's what you get. Mossflower Wood is a pretty standard sort of European forest type, with trees that are more or less oaks and all the other kinds. I don't know. I don't remember a whole lot. The creatures you get in the forest tend to be hedgehogs and mice, different kinds of mice. You've got squirrels, you've got otters, you've got badgers. I think that's most of the ones on the good side.
Or one unnamed
beaver.
What was it? Beaver?
Yeah.
I'll get into
that because there's some discrepancies that we have to pull out here. In a moment. On the bad guys' side, you get rats, weasels, ferrets, stoats, and foxes. Those tend to be in this book. I believe those are all of the bad guys. Then, of course, a snake. You also get the shrews. Forgot about the shrews. The shrews tend to be good guys.
Yeah. They're nuisances, but they tend to not be the bad guys.
Yeah. They're sort of like unruly rabble type thing.
Yes.
And then the owl and cat that you meet, the owl is sort of neutral. He's just going to eat whoever. Let's be real. His goal is to find food and be a smart man owl. And the cat is a vegetarian, so he's like, I'm not going to eat you guys anyway. Yeah. We'll talk more about his ancestry next time. So that's kind of the world building. And in Redwall specifically, it's very much mouse-centric with a few other things around it. Redwall is originally, in this book, a home of mice, and all the brothers and sisters of the Abbey are mice, and the abbot is a mouse, and then everybody else who's there is kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different things. Oh my gosh, Brianna, I forgot about the most important characters.
Who?
The moles.
Oh, the moles, yeah.
How could I forget the moles? The moles are, I think, just some of the best characters in these books. They've got their own accent of how they speak, and it is phenomenal. Listen to the audio, I'm just telling you. Okay, so some discrepancies, because they're very fun and a little bit funky. In this book, at the very beginning, Clooney's riding in a carriage. Now, who's pulling the carriage? Great question. It's a literal horse. Now, the horse does not speak. It seems afraid. As far as we're aware, it is a, like, real-world sized horse.
Yeah.
Trotting, galloping, panicked through on the road, the main road through Mossflower. And then it escapes. And you never hear about the horse ever again.
Or any horse, for that matter.
Or any horse. In the rest of the books, there is not another horse. Now, again, this is Brian Jacques' first book in the series. He's setting things up. This is a discrepancy that's like, where'd the horses go? Was this the last horse? And if it is the last horse, where'd the horse go? That's just one. There's also mention of livestock, like pigs, farms, and things like that. Clooney is said to be a Portuguese sea rat, but Portugal is a real place, and Mossflower's not. And it's like, okay, hold on. So is this set in the real world? And then quickly, no, it's not set in the real world.
Yeah.
It's just something random. And then, so that's a discrepancy. You also have just weird characters or weird things that happen. Like, for example, the beaver. This beaver is, honestly, does something really important in helping Constance the Badger try and assassinate Clooney from afar using a massive bow. And, like, they're conspiring together, and then nothing happens.
Yeah. The funny thing is also Brian Jacques notoriously gives everything a name for the most part.
Yeah.
So, like, there's so many times that just random bad guys will have names. He reuses some of them, let's be honest. But, like, just random bad guys will have names, and he's dead in, like, 2 sentences kind of a thing and stuff. But this this beaver doesn't have a name, is only used as, like, a plot point and everything, and not an actual character.
And you never see another beaver.
Yeah, never again.
That's just crazy to me.
It is.
I'm trying to think. There's a few other discrepancies. The shrews, their name are the Gaussum, the guerrilla union of shrews in Mossflower. The Gaussum, with an M at the end. And in this book, there's also a shrew named Gaussum. She is unfortunately the one that dies by the snake. Yeah. Sorry, lady. But you never get another mouse named Gaussum. She's the only one, and then it just ends up being what they're all called. You never get another shrew
named Gaussum.
You never get another shrew named Gaussum.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So there's some interesting things. This is Brian Jacques' first book in the series. He starts with some interesting ideas. He does continue a lot of the ideas through. So, you know, we in later books get to explore more of Mossflower and other parts of the land. And occasionally other random animals. It's just kind of, there's some interesting questions in this book about him saying something and then having no follow through, no continuity for the rest of the things. Yeah. One of the big things is the birds. So it's an interesting, you were saying earlier about the owl.
Yes.
Birds have varying degrees of intelligence. Sometimes they are able to speak. Sometimes they have their own language. So the sparrows are said to have their own language. And Matthias is able to understand it for some reason because he's the hero. That's why. And he spends a lot of time with Warbeak. But then
he actually, I guess, in the context of with the sparrows, learns their language.
Yeah.
And everything, which is interesting and stuff.
Yeah.
But sometimes,
Captain Snow, the owl, doesn't have his own language. He just speaks the same way that, you know, the cat speaks, or the same way that Basil speaks. And so,
and I think that's ongoing, never a problem that they have talking owls, because there's a couple of other owl characters, even within the few that I've reread recently, and none of them ever have a problem with speaking with other animals and stuff.
It's often smaller animals or smaller birds that have language barriers.
Which is interesting.
Don't speak, but show understanding of what other creatures are saying. Just some interesting things. That might be something we talk about as we continue reading. A fun bit. We're going to talk about our favorite characters and our least favorite characters. Now, Brianna and I are very similar in a lot of ways. So actually, we've made our own like S tier list of all of the characters in these books. We are not going to go through that unless people want us to. I don't think people want us to, but Brianna and I have those so that we can figure out who were our favorite characters, who are our least favorite characters. Brianna, would you like to start us talking about what are your favorite characters? And we've agreed to say 2, and I will try and stick with that.
So, my 2 favorite characters I'm going to pick. The first one is Constance the Badger.
Heck yes.
Badgers in general in this series have always been my favorite. I usually just love them no matter what and stuff.
Yeah.
And Constance was obviously like the foundation for that because she's the first badger we meet in this series if you read it in order. And she's just very strong and intelligent also. But also she knows how to have a good time. Because she loves to like joke around.
She's a party
and
badger
all that
sometimes.
Yeah, she can definitely be a party badger sometimes and stuff. We don't know a lot about Constance's backstory. I don't think they ever explain her backstory or where she came from or that kind of thing. But she's very... Actually, I am referencing a little bit of something that happens in another book where she's in, because I think she's only in this book and one other one. Does mention she was raised at Redwall in that one, so she's been there since she was little. So I do remember that. But so she's been there her whole life. She loves Redwall. She has helped take care of Redwall. She's considered one of the leaders. Like Abbott, Mortimer will often like get advice from her and all of that kind of stuff. She's also the strongest creature at Redwall and everything. So she's big, she's strong, she's kind, she's funny, all that kind of stuff. She's great. And she don't need no man either, kind of a thing stuff. Like, and never at any point does she ever like express interest in being with anybody. She's just herself and enjoying her life, which I think is a really wonderful example to have in a book of a strong woman and who doesn't need to have a relationship to be fulfilled. I love romance, as we were talking about at other points and stuff, but like it's cool to have this like stronger, and I want to say older woman because she kind of comes off as like being older and stuff with that. Now, my other favorite character is Jess the squirrel, and hers is a little bit different. She also is strong. She's a fighter. But also, one of my favorite things about her, she's married, and she's the mom of one of the other like important side characters, this little squirrel baby named Sam, and then she has a husband, and in the dynamic between the two of them, the husband's like, "You got this, sweetie," and she'll go off and do some daring do kind of a thing and stuff, and it's just very sweet and fun. I love it, and I think honestly, if I remember correctly, I always loved the badgers, the squirrels, and the otters the most. But for most of the characters that came from those groups and everything growing up. But Jess is just so much fun. She's a good mom, but she's also like very strong warrior type at the same time as well. And also doesn't need a man, but loves her man. Yeah. Kind of a thing and stuff. So, those are my two favorites. Two strong ladies. Love them a lot and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I completely agree with those. They are two of my favorites, and because you have said two of my favorites, I get to say two of my other favorites, which are, of course, Basil Staghare, who is silly and fun, but he's also a warrior. He is, he says that he used to be in the military, and there's a question of like what military, and it's actually never specified which military he's in. He was just in a military at some point, and the way you meet him, he is helping Matthias to rescue the Bankfuls, and then Matthias is trying to think, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to rescue them? And just a voice comes out of nowhere and suddenly says, I'm going to help you. But then it's in hare speech, which is kind of proper British with just the way that he speaks. Definitely listen to the audiobook to get the way that Basil speaks, because it's really funny. But he's lighthearted, and even he experiences a really serious injury later. He loves food is the other thing. So anytime the hares come to visit, which is a future story thing, but anytime specifically Basil comes into the kitchens, the friar of the kitchens is just like, no, get out. We can't have him. He's going to eat us out of house and home, and sends him away. I love him because he's brave. He's funny. He can take command like a group of people, a group of creatures, I guess, to defend the Abbey. And he does become one of the main defenders of the Abbey. But he's also funny. He loves the little ones at the Abbey and like strikes up a friendship with some of the young folks. He's just really great. My second favorite character is probably Warbeak. Because, but it's so hard. Yes. Warbeak is a sparrow. She is the niece of the king of the sparrows, and she gets injured, I believe, and then falls to the floor of the Abbey. They capture her. She and Matthias end up spending time together and becoming really strong, really good friends. And
Yeah.
At first, she's his prisoner that he's bringing up to the attic. But then through that time, they get to know each other and they become friends. And Matthias says, actually, because you're my friend, I can't keep you prisoner anymore, so I'm going to free you. And then she goes and helps him. She defends him from her uncle, and kind of she and her mom protect Matthias when he's up there getting kind of tormented by the sparrows.
Yeah.
And then the sparrows actually end up helping to defend the abbey from the horde and just being part of the defenders. They're important characters, and I think we can talk maybe next time about some of the discrepancies with the sparrows, because there's just some things. No, we'll have to talk in a couple of weeks about what happens to the sparrows, because there's a lot that happens there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Basil and Warbeak are probably two of my favorites, but I just have to give a shout out. Okay, I'm not gonna say another character. I'm just saying the moles.
Okay.
The moles. Okay.
The moles are great.
The moles are great.
Yes.
Fantastic characters, lovable, soft. They're the reason I love moles to this day, is just because of these characters throughout the entire series. Okay, I'm done.
Yes. Okay.
No more.
Don't worry, we have a specific mole character we can bring up in the next episode, so
Yeah, we do.
you can talk more about moles then.
Oh, I love him.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, least favorite characters now. I think we both agree.
It's Colin.
It's Colin Vole. He is one of the
Colin
bank
the Vole.
voles that gets kidnapped. He is a little turd. He is whiny.
Yeah.
He is selfish. He makes problems for the Abbey and makes problems for other people. He's just...
Yep.
He is just the worst, is really what I have to say.
He is. Absolutely. I don't really have a lot to add to that. He just was, like, so annoying to read.
Yeah.
While you were trying to, like, get through these things.
Yeah.
He almost ruined the Matthias and Basil being able to save his family and stuff. And you're just like,
He's
oh
just
my
annoying.
gosh, why?
Sorry, Colin, but get better.
Yeah, seriously.
Cool. Now, we're going to do a segment called the nostalgia rating. This is just...
Yes.
Does it hold up the same? What do we give it in terms of how does it make us feel? Brianna, what is your nostalgia rating for this book?
So just for some clarification, our rating is a 1 through 5. So people know that in the future. So I'm going to give Redwall, the first book in the series, a 3.5. And the reason why I'm going to give that is I enjoyed this book. It was fun going back to the very beginning again, but I also was very strongly reminded about how much better certain of the stories were than this one down the line. And while there is some really great characters in this one, there was just even better characters later down the line, and also plots, in my opinion. So this one was really good. It's hard to say if I want to say good, actually. This one was just a good start, kind of a thing. When you're starting off a series, especially with something that is technically like a middle grade book, this isn't overly complicated. It's got a lot of like pieces involved, but like the story itself isn't overly complicated. You keep going forward down a path towards a specific goal, and we end the book with the goal being accomplished most of the time and stuff. And so it's a really good, like, fun, don't have to think too hard kind of a read. So that's why I'm giving it like a 3.5, because it wasn't terrible. Like, I could see myself reading this to my kids if I ever have any kind of a thing and stuff. But also, I've read better kind of a thing. So
I mean, I'm the same. I gave it a 3 for similar reasons. It's not my favorite of the series. It is a good start, and there's a lot of discrepancies and a lot of things that were started that don't get pulled through. So it's in, and by no means a bad book. It is a good book. It is just Brian Jacques increases his craft and gets better with the more that he writes, especially in this series. It's especially nostalgic for us because it was the first of the Redwall series. I don't think it was the first one I read. I don't remember which one was the first one I read, but it's what
I don't remember that either.
Starts the series. It's the first of this. In terms of, it was the first published. Now, we'll get into this maybe next time. It is not technically chronologically the first book. It's just not. So yeah, we'll get into that next time with the next book. But for now, we can leave you with, it's a good book. It's worth reading. Especially if you like adventure stories, if you like ensemble cast, if you like fantasy mammals, mostly.
Yeah. Anthropomorphic
animals. Definitely give it a read. If you like audiobooks, listen to the audiobook.
Yeah.
Brian Jacques
highly recommend
narrates most of the audiobooks. So you're not just getting some random person, or maybe not random person, an audiobook narrator. You're getting the man himself narrating his books. So it's definitely worth checking out. Brianna, any other thoughts for this book?
Nothing else I can really add to this. It was just really fun to get back in the series again.
Yeah.
At this point in my life. Very different than when I originally read them or even when I reread them. So it was interesting looking at it through the lens of an adult who's lived a lot more life than I had originally at that point and everything.
Yeah. I think the only thing I'll say extra is that one of the things I love about Redwall, specifically, I guess, the place as an entity, is always at the end of the books, there's this call to Redwall. And it's this, or I guess this summons to Redwall that just says something along the lines of, if you ever find yourself in the area, if you're ever in need, come to us. We will offer you care. We'll always be right here. Our doors are always open to you. And every single time I've read that, I've gotten emotional. Because like, I'm not a person that cries a lot. I'm not a person that, I mean, I get emotional, but I don't cry. And they didn't make me cry, but there is this sense, and I think, these are books that really enhance that sense in me of hospitality, and like, my doors are always open. My home is yours. Come in, be a part of the family, be a part of what we've got going on. Come share a meal with us. And that was one of the things we should talk about in every book, is Brian Jacques describes the food in such simple ways. It's not like these long, drawn out descriptions of food, but he gives a lot of food descriptions, and there's cheeses and there's fruit and tarts and pies and drinks that are just, they sound so good. I mean, strawberry fizz, I don't even know actually what that is. It's just some sort of fizzy strawberry drink, but phenomenal. And actually, now that I think about it, in the UK, they have this thing called squash, which is a concentrated juice liquid, basically, that you dilute with water. And I'm wondering if maybe that's something similar to what strawberry fizz would have been. I don't know. I'll have to pull out the Redwall cookbook and look at the recipe for strawberry fizz. Yeah. Guys,
you definitely
there's
should.
a cookbook.
There is a cookbook.
That's really good.
I will say, if you were ever like jealous of anime food, this also I feel like kind of fits this a little bit as well. Yeah. It just was like such a vivid description that you always are like, yeah, I love that. Yeah. Like I would eat that kind of thing. And so that definitely is another huge part of the series is just the love of food that Brian Jacques
and there's always a feast going on, or a meal being shared between friends, and it's phenomenal. Yeah. There's also in a lot of books you find out like animals, like the species of animal has a favorite type of food. The otters have hot root soup, and it's just a spicy sort of seafood soup. The moles have deeper than ever turnip and tater pie. Do you remember that?
I do. So now that you said it, I remember, but I wouldn't have remembered it off the top of my head.
Skilly and Duff. It's just there's some good stuff in there.
There is a lot of great stuff.
I think that's all that we have for today.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Readers Clubhouse. If you like this discussion and you want to hear more, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify every other Friday. You can check out the episode description for our social medias. If you're watching or listening on YouTube, like and subscribe, leave a comment down below. I never thought I'd be a person that said that, Brianna, but here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. And you can join us in the Clubhouse next time as we discuss not the second book, the next book in the Redwall saga that we are going to read, which is Mossflower, which is a prequel to this book. So get ready to not know any of the characters. It's a brand new cast.
True.
Well, thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.